Good morning and welcome to EDSN 204. I wanted to start out today by just going through Blackboard and looking at the different sessions and also reviewing our syllabus for the shortened 8-week period that we're working within. So if you go to the start here to the left, you'll see that you have a syllabus, calendar, and more. And then clicking on syllabus will allow you to download the file. All right, so here's our Advanced Environmental Design EDSN 204. Let's go over the major course learning objectives. So it says, upon successful completion of this course, the student will be expected to 1. Create an appropriate design concept for an advanced project in one of the following areas of specialization: commercial interior design, decorative arts, kitchen and bath, or garden design. 2. Assemble research of current sources that pertain to the project and design concept and prepare a research bibliography. 3. Apply their accumulated skills and knowledge to independently create a format, a project, including the project scope, timeline, content, and presentation method based upon the given parameters. 4. Demonstrate an ability to program a space, including concept development, adjacency studies, schematic design and development, all necessary working drawings, specifications, and appropriate presentation materials. 5. Showcase their abilities in an advanced project, including all of the below, so type, design, concept, and building summary, color rendered site plan with landscaping, color rendered and labeled floor plan with furniture and fixtures, electric lighting communication plan, HVAC plumbing details, section drawing of the entire structure showing level relationships. And this is new. I know that both of you, I think, have had a chance to start this course before, so there's a few things. Don't just fast forward this part of the lecture for today. Go ahead and review the entire list of alphabetized bullet points. The section drawing of the entire structure I don't think was included before, but we are asking that of you now. And because we're asking for the section drawing of the entire structure, it kind of eliminates a few of the original elevations that you were asked to draw, so it's going to be balanced a little bit differently in this course. Lighting fixture schedule, finished materials and schedules, furniture and accessory examples and schedules, cabinetry and appliance plans, elevations and schedules, custom furniture case good working drawings in half-inch scale, color perspectives of the major areas, complete a project within a specified time frame. I can't stress this enough. Obviously, we're working with a shortened time frame of 8 weeks, and you can review each of the sessions, as I will later, and look at your critiques and see how some of them are doubled up. If you've already completed parts of the project, then go ahead and turn them in early. I want you to get as far ahead as you can in this class in order to complete everything on time. Prepare a professional presentation for project jury utilizing the appropriate use of design vocabulary, justification of a design solution, construct a design solution which addresses specific populations, globalization, and sustainability. So here's our recommended text. It's the Interior Graphic Standards, the second edition by Bengelli. And let's go straight into our course guide outline. So session 1, this is what I'll be covering today. I'm going to give you an introduction to myself and the class. We're reviewing the syllabus currently. We're going to talk about the different options for your project, although I think you've chosen them already. We're going to talk a little bit about editing and making sure that you're focusing in on your subject as much as possible so it's not too broad, but maybe not too focused. I'll be able to consult with you individually when we set up some meeting times. I'm available on Thursday. I'll be in from 8:30 to 3:20. Also today we'll talk a little bit about the intro to globalization and some links that are available to you, and research techniques. And I was going to have a project question and answer, but I see that no one is in attendance today, so if you do have questions, feel free to email me or set up an appointment time on Thursday that we can individually meet. So I'm going to minimize the syllabus for a second here and go back and take a look at how everything's divided on Blackboard. So I'm going to click on the left into class sessions. And we're in session 1, which is programming and preliminary research and adjacency matrix. So clicking on session 1, you'll see I have session 1 learning activities, which these are actually associated links to go with the globalization factor of the class. So we have global web links, and you can click from any of the bottom to review and be thinking about how you're going to incorporate that into design. I know some of you have had these in previous classes. And if I go back to session 1 and you click on projects, I haven't been able to meet with each of you individually, but here were some of the options that were given to you as thought starters if you had not yet decided on something that you wanted to start researching and begin creating your project. So there was megachurch, assisted living center, common grounds, restaurant, center for healing. Every week you're going to see a critique. By smashing everything into an 8-week session, we don't have a lot of time. Whether you're able to come to class or not, you will be expected to give each other a critique. And after seeing that some of you didn't show up today, I might create a discussion board in which you will have to send in, or I will post a video that I will require each of you to send of you reviewing your information. If you're not going to be present in class or be able to show it in the CAB environment, we still need to be giving each other feedback. That's so important in our industry. I can't stress it enough. When I was working in the contract industry, I worked for a local contract furniture design company, and I'll review it more in depth later. But we would constantly have design meetings. We had a scheduled meeting that was every week for 5 hours, and we would sit in the meeting and critique each other's work for the different projects that we're working on. At any given point, we were working on 20 to 30 projects, large projects that would involve hospitals, higher education, office, corporate, design. And we would go through and really pick things apart. And not only would we pick apart our new concepts for design, but we would also talk about things that had failed in the past, bad space planning. You're not going to do everything right in your life all the time. You're not going to get every project 100%. And even with critiques, there's still a lot of self-improvement you can find. There might be something I miss. I'm human. So constantly critiquing and making sure that you're involved just as much as I am in this process with each other, especially in such a small class, will be great. I'd like you to get to know each other better. I'd like to get to know you. So to have at least a video that you're reviewing on screen, that way you're held accountable to each other and to me, will be very helpful. So we'll have to see how that format presents itself if you're not going to be present in the CAB environment. But here's the first week's critique. So it says, Advanced Design Critique 1, Research and Concept Development. Think about your client profile carefully. Brainstorm on what clients want and need. Identify what rooms and spaces are needed and how they will be used. Give thought to possible equipment and mechanical requirements. Select the building site and research the local climate, terrain, culture, and codes. Explore different inspirations, and it might be helpful to divide the research into categories and to employ the assistance of your Ivy Tech librarian, who is always ready and willing to help in research sources. After you have totally exhausted all of your brainstorming powers, then these are the things that are due to me. So collect 6 inspirational photos. Through your research, collect 3 articles or websites related to your project. Obviously, these are educational websites, and we'll talk about how to find that information if you're not already familiar. Write 3 rough concept statements. Prepare 1 criteria matrix adjacency diagram. Prepare a client profile outlining design parameters, preferences, and division of space, and assemble a binder in which you're going to contain all of your research throughout the semester. This should be a very large binder to accommodate research for the entire semester, and research will be a large portion of your grade. Begin a bibliography which cites all of your sources. So now that you're in 204 Advanced Design, there's a lot higher expectation of you and your personal accountability. I am here as a resource to you. I'm very familiar with the contract design field and all of the drawings that you're working through, but I'm not going to hold your hand in your calendar. There's a calendar associated with the class, and I have cleanly laid out for you each project's requirements for the week, which I expect to be turned in on the assignment critique for week 1. We'll turn in all of this stuff. You'll attach it as either a PDF or a Word file, whatever goes along with each piece of information. Obviously, your research and bibliography. I want to see everything though, everything listed. I want to make sure that you're on track. But at the same time, if for any reason you choose to get behind in your work, you have to go back and update this information. I don't want to be given critique 1, 2, and 3 in week 4. I want you to stay on track. There's only 8 weeks. I'm not trying to be grumpy here. I just want to make sure that we can all stay on the same page and really have wonderful projects at the end. The further you fall behind, the less ability we do have to critique you. I mean, I will always be available on Thursdays to set up something, but it is just as important to have a second opinion of your classmate. I'm only one person. Design is a very taste-based thing. I'm not going to grade based off of my taste, but it's nice to have multiple people's opinions on things, and we can't do that when people are falling behind. So obviously there's the critique 1 that's shown on the screen. If this becomes confusing to you, what's due in which sessions, we can go back to our Start Here button at the left, Syllabus, Calendar, and More, and then Calendar of Activities and Deadlines. Clicking on it will bring up the PDF. All right, so here we can see classes begin. Yay! Lecture 8:30 to 11:20. Every time we're going to have that lecture time. You may or may not be here. I know it doesn't work for everyone in their work schedule, but I will be recording the video. There's only 2 of you, so even when you are here for critique, I wouldn't expect it to go the full 3 hours. And we might talk about what time works best if we were able. Brenda, I don't know if you like to be called Sue. I think I remember from when I was on your jury, to maybe bring in a time that works so we could all meet, even if it's for, 15 to 20 minutes a person to just review things as a group. We could talk about that flexibility. So for week 2, this is what's due. The blue is always what is due. So project selection, the rough design concept, and the adjacency matrix. And then I just put, because this is really broad, but then I put critique 1, which means to refer back to the actual specific specified information under session 1, critique 1. So whenever it says critique, it means refer to the red critique 1 available under your session week, and I need all of this stuff. I just wanted to, I can only put so much information on the calendar, so in blue is always the broad, oversweeping concept of what's due, and then each week you'll have the critique that's posted with the specifics. I also have the document that you can pull up that enables you to, all right, enables you to keep track of any notes you want to write, and you can print it for your individual use. And possibly it would be a good idea to binder tab your binder by each assignment week until you're ready to put it all together. That way you say, okay, I have critique 1, this was due and then you have a separation folder, critique 2, this was due. That way you're keeping it all in one place and it doesn't get messy and unorganized. I know in past classes I've had students who come to me and say, oh, but I just don't remember what week it was once they're falling behind. It's not my job to organize your time and keep track of it for you. I think that the calendar will be useful to you as well as the syllabus, which also has session to session outline. And I've been pretty clear with class sessions and giving a pretty definitive title to them so that it does prompt your memory if you do fall behind. But I'm not going to be resending information. You're responsible to go back into the sessions and review them if you do fall behind. So really quick, I'm going to minimize this and pull up a PowerPoint presentation that I've created and talk a little bit about me. I'm not familiar with either of you except for the fact that I sat on your jury at the end of last semester. So this is EDSN 204. I am Allison Green. I prefer to be called Allison. You don't have to call me Professor Green. That always makes me feel like I'm playing the board game Clue. So I'm fine with you calling me Allison Green and keeping it rather light and conversational. I wanted to put things into perspective with contract design. Contract design is such a huge, diverse field. It's so big. Below, I just put together a fun word bank of things that came up in my everyday work life. So you have account designer, Photoshop. I used Photoshop constantly. I dealt with acoustics, architectural finishes, sound masking and electronic devices, communication, firewalls and protection, flooring programs, PowerPoint, used it all the time, reconfigures, so ripping about cubicles, taking them all apart, figuring out how I can put all the pieces and parts back together in a different way, thinking outside of the box. I did do all the drawings that you're required to do for this class, respected ceiling plans, section drawings, detailed drawings. I've worked with architects, contractors, anything you can think that you can do in our field. I've had at least a little bit of piece of it. So I will be a great resource to you. I'm ready and willing to help you, but I want you to understand that 8 weeks is not a lot of time to get everything done. So you got to really plan and project management. And at this point at 204, we expect you to be able to do that. It's the end of your senior career. You should be advancing enough to get ready for the work environment and control your own time and schedule. So I just copied this down off of the asid.org website. You can see highlighted in the lime green below where you can find the information. Commercial, sometimes also referred to as contract design, focuses on the design professional design team coordination, planning, budgeting, specifying/purchasing, and furnishings, installation of interior environments used for commercial. So government, educational, offer times, higher ed, and hospitality. Many designers specialize in one or more of the following areas of commercial design. Entertainment. Entertainment design brings together the use of interiors, lighting, sound, and other technologies for movies, television, video, dramatic and musical theater, clubs, concert, theme parks, and industrial projects. Facilities management. A facilities manager develops schedules for building, upkeep, maintenance, addressing safety and health issues, and lighting and acoustic needs. A facilities manager also plans, coordinates office moves or expansions, and serves as a project manager during construction or renovation. Government and institutional. A government designer is familiar with the very specific needs and requirements associated with working with government agencies, such as military bases, federal buildings or government offices. An institutional designer focuses on projects such as child care, educational, religious, correctional, and recreational facilities, fire and police stations, courts, embassies, libraries, auditoriums, museums, and transportation terminals. Healthcare. Healthcare designers create environments for hospitals, clinics, examination rooms, surgical suites, mobile units, hospice care, nursing, assisted living, or long-term care facilities, or any other healthcare environment. Hospitality and restaurant. Hospitality design focuses on environments that entertain or host the public, including nightclubs, restaurants, theaters, hotels, city and country clubs, golf facilities, cruise ships, and conference facilities. Office. Office design focuses on the public and private areas utilized by corporate and professional service firms. Retail store planning. Retail design and store planning concentrate on retail venues, including boutiques, department stores, outlets, showrooms, food retailing centers, and shopping malls. So the reason that I posted this information is a lot of times I think we hear the words contract design and we think, what is the difference between contract design and commercial design? And a lot of people use them interchangeably, and they really are. Contract design, specifically as someone who worked in the contract furniture industry, I did all of these things. So I worked with entertainment. I worked with facilities managers, although I was not usually responsible for the actual process of coordinating the expansions. Sometimes I was responsible for the furniture moving. So they would start out and say, I have X amount of desks, this amount of employees, they already have this amount of computers. Show us where each person goes in the space, so I'd label them with their names and make sure all their technology and stuff ended up back at the right desk. We'd coordinate phasing so that they can understand how flooring would affect the project. We also dealt in flooring, so we had a flooring manager at my company who I would work with, and we'd say, okay, we have a completely new space. We need to decide what flooring works best for them. Is that carpet tile? What is the amount of years and really what is the budget that they have to pay for the flooring? Okay, then how many years do they need it to stay up to code for them, or are they a marketing company possibly that's going to rebrand every so many years? And then once you decide that, you could say, well, if you choose this flooring, it has this adhesive, which means it's going to take 3 days to dry, and after that dries, then you can go ahead and move your employees in, which would be the next phase of the project where you would be adding furniture. After you plan for the employees to move in, you would think, okay, we have their furniture in the space. Now we have to think about how data and telecommunication comes into play so that we can have an electrician come through and wire everything back up. And after that's done, then you can actually move the physical people into the space because it's ready to go. And that is dependent too on if there are other things such as finishes, paints. So there's 100 steps and processes that go into contract design and even management outside of just being a facilities manager. A lot of these areas of contract design run together. I worked with government, healthcare, and very rarely with hospitality and restaurant. For hospitality and restaurant, a lot of times there'll be a standards program that's set up. So you can imagine if you have an Applebee's or possibly a Best Western, they're a huge hotel chain and they want to look very similar. So usually they'll hire a large design company, not someone located in Midwest Indiana, maybe in Chicago or New York, that they have a design headquarters that they've contracted in to continually do the work on every Best Western so that it looks cohesive in design. That wasn't something we did locally because, as I said, it's small, working out of South Bend. So we mostly did local businesses and companies. I did have the opportunity working in the healthcare fields to do a Mercy Circle in Chicago and travel to Chicago monthly to work with the Sisters of Mercy Circle on developing a place for the nuns to live and retire. So sometimes there are even these opportunities within the smaller markets and the smaller work areas locally. But there are tons of opportunity within this field and lots of things to plan for. So going forward in my PowerPoint, here's an example of my work and just the different processes that you encounter every day in contract design. So the original involvement of me on this project before a head designer at my company left and I took over the project was to develop this light fixture. I worked with a lady out of New York who did hand-blown glass, and she had a number of different sizes of these globes. There were spirals, cylinders, round, and then I had to examine the space which we were renovating. So we ended up adding this MDC wall covering with all the movement. We added the cut veneer wallpaper that would go over each of these pillared areas, and it also had a recessed backing, and figured out all of the lighting that was going up into the ceiling around the fixture. So the stairwell was new as well. They ripped out the old stairwell. I worked to develop what I wanted in the project. So a lot of times I think people get scared by how many of the contract documents we have and what that means for you in the future. You have to be detailed. There's a difference between an architectural designer and a project designer, but most of the times we'll be working with architects and contractors, and we just need to best communicate our ideas. So if you were to zoom in on these plans, you could see, for instance, this is the same kind of spiraled wall detail, and I said the size of the sheets that I knew I could purchase it in, where I was hoping to have this seam for them to be hidden, and then I would call out a note saying hide seam as best possible. They would be responsible for how it was getting glued, but we would come together and work, and I would do my best to detail out my design concept within these documents. And then the architect or contractor usually would revise them to make sure that they were a little bit more technical and specific. So for this project, when it was finally installed, it looked like this, but I had worked in SketchUp to do a 3D rendering and view of it to see what it eventually could look like. And you see it's very similar. We did have to tweak some things, knowing the heights of the stairs and how the pendant sizes would be. So she would send me back a physical drawing of what that would look like from above, and I would decide if it was balanced enough in shape, design, and concept. And eventually I would make sure to coordinate the other areas in the space with that room in color and concept. Another thing that I do personally, so getting to know me better, is I'm an oil painter, and I had to hand paint in oil to match all of the switch plates to the actual wood veneers on the walls. So you never know what skills you're going to use, whether you're an artist or not a fine artist. If you're more technically inclined or possibly really good at color theory or finishes, there's so many options and possible career paths attached to the contract design field. And even within, I was at a contract furniture company, people think of that as only cubicles and nice seating. But at the end of the day, I've got to have a piece of everything, even into the architectural design of the project. So objectives. Some of these slides I took from my 282 class that I'm teaching later today, just as a refresher of what we're looking for as we're researching these large projects. Research in a specialized area of environmental design, development or advancement of the specialized area, and project management. So below I have a calendar of what it used to look like before I went purely teaching at Ivy Tech, and now I also just started a job teaching high school locally. So before that though, I would have, as I said, 20 to 30 projects that I'd be working on at a time, and I would have to project manage them weekly, but then I'd have a second calendar where I would project manage them out throughout an entire year and forecast how it was going to develop, what times I was going to give things like my space planning design, turn that into the head of design, when I thought I could get my specifications to the accounts coordinators, when I thought I was going to have to do install plans so that I could get it figured out to my installers who are going to physically put the furniture into the space, when I had holidays or training that would conflict with the schedule that I was planning, so that I would make sure I left enough time on top of all the meetings that I had throughout the week. These are skills that you are going to be asked by your employers to use daily in all types and really any environment that you could find in the design field. So that's what we're expecting of you at this point, is to really sit down and, whether it's initially with me, talk about what works best with your work schedule on top of your school schedule to get these 8 weeks completed and get all of the pieces and parts done. Or whether it's you hunkering down if you want to take full responsibility and coming up with a calendar and sticking to it. It's a very important part of this project that you do meet the critique deadlines. Movers and shakers. This is just thinking about research again. Key people that are identified and possibly advancing the area that you're studying. Maybe this is a little less important to our class as it would be to the 280T Special Topics class, but there are people who inspire you. Inspiration isn't only found from spaces. It can also come from leading designers right now, like Patricia Urigala. She designs for Steelcase. She's a furniture designer. She really inspires me, and her work, just the shape and line and textures that she uses, are things that I like to emulate in my overall designs of spaces. So think outside the box about your inspirations and how you can use those for your project. Key industries, leading the field, positive change. Be thinking about, for the globalization and sustainability factors into your projects, how you don't want it just to be a cool space. That's not enough. We want to see how you're forwarding design development within the community or within a certain global respect. So are you looking at it purely in Chicago, in an underdeveloped area that you're looking to progress and make into this beautiful new area and bring in clientele? What is the actual social thought behind your design? What clients are you trying to designate as the people that are coming to your space? How is it creating a positive change, moving things forward? The places, be really specific as to why you chose to put your building where you put it. And we can talk more about that individually as I've realized what you're actually studying, and we can talk in a set meeting time on our own. But it is all very important information. Current research on the topic, so current trends. If you're doing a restaurant, I want to know your restaurant trends. I want to know the demographics, the economics, any special technology that can go into your space. When I was working at the contract furniture dealership, we also ended up doing specialized technology, so welcoming screens, for instance, at Notre Dame, or restaurant signage and digital signage. Or you could have digital employees circulating through that you would see on a wall, where you could see the face of each employee that worked at a company. Are you going to have video in any way in your space? Thinking about data and communication and how that relates to what you're doing. Even within a restaurant, are you going to have televisions in your bar? Are you going to have tables that are interactive? There's so many neat advances in technology that can really make your project shine a little bit more by being more specific on that within the research. Current best practices. Researching more about what is the best of the best in the field you're looking into, and again, pushing for positive change, telling me what makes your project not only neat, but also important in the design world right now. What resources are available? Future areas of development. So not only where is it now, what's trending now, but where do you think it's going? Think about that as you're creating your project. That's almost what makes it more exciting. You can look into what's cool and popular right now, but if you don't have an eye to the future, maybe you are going to be leading those future areas of development. You have a great idea that might not have happened yet that you want to incorporate into your design. I know, Katie, you're talking about doing kind of a secret agency, and I just went to Chicago to a restaurant called Bordel where they did it as an old speakeasy, and you have to Google the restaurant in order to find out what restaurant it's actually in, because it's a speakeasy, so it has a hidden door. And once you get to the what looks like a Mexican restaurant, if you talk to the right person, they then tell you how to pressure sensitively open a door that takes you up a set of stairs, which gets you into the actual speakeasy restaurant, which overlooks the entire city. So just that idea of little elements that are constantly missed that set your project apart from other projects, that's what we're looking for in the advanced stage. Future areas of development, anticipated outcomes. So projecting what possibly could happen in the area of design that you're doing. These are just things for, in our class, you to be thinking about as you're developing your concepts. Blackboard resources. Okay, so I'm going to go escape out of this PowerPoint. I'm going to go back online. So if I go into Blackboard resources as it pertains to researching for the class, you have library resources, and there's a number of resources under there. Some are old and some are new, but they're all useful. You have the Ivy Tech libraries, Instant Link. Primary mission of the library at Ivy Tech is to provide access to materials, information, and services that support and supplement the mission of the college. By clicking here, you have access to those things. You have Ivy Joe, which allows you to find the journal title available in our online database. It also allows you to get a subject list of online journals in our database. We have this good link, which was sent out a long time ago, but is still relevant in evaluating internet sources. So I talked about educational sources when you're working on your bibliography and picking those websites for the upcoming critique. So it says, is the internet fun? Yes. Is the internet a good tool for research? Yes, but. So freedom of publication in cyberspace is what makes the internet such a wonderful and powerful resource. Any person, any group, any organization can publish whatever they want. So your search results could be educational, or they could vary in their quality, reliability, and validity. So when you're thinking about evaluating those sources, you want to think about the following. Purpose. Is the purpose clearly stated? Is the webpage trying to inform, persuade, explain, or sell something? Be very sure that it's not just a one-sided web page that's giving you half of the information that you need. You can always tell from some of those ads that will pop up on Facebook, even as it pertains to design, where it's only focused on complete modernism without an eye to design as a whole. So you want to make sure that they're not just trying to sell you on their product or their concept. You know, focus, if you're looking at flooring and it's purely a Shaw contract flooring website, they're obviously trying to sell you the Shaw product, so they're not going to give you complete information on flooring as a whole. You want to kind of broaden your view and find a more educational source than actually going into a manufacturer that's so specific. Who is intended audience? Subject experts, general public, or school students? So you want to be thinking about this in your research as well, and make sure that you have a good understanding, if it is subject experts, of what you're reading and using. If it's meant for school students, that it's not too lowbrow or too easily spoken. I want to see that your research and your final concept is polished and educational, so it's speaking to people in the design field. Author. Is the author identifiable? Are his and her credentials, education, training, experience, position, title listed? That's important. We don't just want Blogger Joe from nowhere. We want to make sure that they are trained and educated in the field. What institution or organization is the person affiliated with? Again, this could go along with, Are they selling something? Do they have a bias? Is there a way to contact the author? Are they speaking for themselves or an unofficial representative? Here we have the source. If the source is an association or organization, is it known and respected? It's easy enough to become a .org. You know, that doesn't always mean it's educational. You want to check all of the following, which you can read for yourselves, because I'm sure you're tired of hearing me read word for word, but accuracy, currency, coverage, objectivity. All of this is available for you. Is something that I'll be evaluating at the end with your bibliography resources, or week to week during your critiques, kind of just taking a peek at the web links that you've listed and the books that you're choosing as you're creating your bibliography and research. So again, that's under resources, and then library resources, and evaluating internet resources. All right. So that's looking at just the resources as it pertains to your research. If we go back to our critique 1, so let's read through this one more time. We want to make sure that we're collecting 6 inspirational photos, and through our research we collect 3 articles or websites related to your project. We just talked about the reliability of resources and making sure that they're educational, which you can use in the resources part of your Blackboard if you need a review. I need 3 rough concept statements, and even if you have already started this process once before or you're so far along in your process, this is going to be due no matter what. I need to see that brainstorming and design development and programming regardless of if you've already done it in the past, and I'm possibly going to ask you to refine or change it depending on the information I can see after you turn in your first critique. So it might not all be set in stone and you might not be up and running like you think you are. I'll still need to review it, as well as your peers from your class will need to review it in a critique format. Prepare a client profile outlining design parameters, preferences, and division of space, and assemble a binder which contains all research. This should be a very large binder to accommodate research for the entire semester. Now, the assembly of the binder is not listed on every single critique, but it's in the background with this expectation that you are constantly taking your critiques and, as I said, adding dividers or whatever you need to do for your own project management, but keeping that binder, constantly building it throughout the semester so that you maintain organization and are keeping yourself accountable on your side. At the end, it'll be that binder that you turn in. It really will be easier if you're doing it step by step, week by week, than trying to throw it all together at once and refer back to older weeks. Plus, you won't benefit from the critiques of your teacher and fellow classmate. So let's go back and kind of look at an overview of all of the class sessions. So we have 8 class sessions. I've gone over session 1. Let's look ahead to session 2. I think it would be great for you, if you haven't already, to just click through and read the overview for the week and look at the homework and assignments that are due. Also to go ahead and open the PDF version of your calendar. Look at what's due. It moves extremely quickly. So for week 2, we just reread the critique 1, but after that, we're going into the schematic design and finalized design concept. So we're only going to have 1 week where we're working with this rough design concept, and it's going to get critiqued. And then we're going to go straight into our finalized design concept after the schematic design is complete. And for schematic design, because we are running short on weeks, I'm going to have to see both your bubble diagrams and how you're moving that forward into your block diagrams combined in 1 week, which we'll talk more about in week 2. But looking forward then to week 4, That's when you'll have a rough floor plan with rough fixture furniture arrangement due. Week 5, final floor plan with proposed fixture and furniture arrangement. 1 interior elevation, 1 exterior elevation, 1 full building section. You're going to need to, I have little prompts for you as I want you to be responsible for your time more so in this class. I still will kind of give you a prompt on project management of things that are in the background you need to be thinking about. So order and arrange literature and material samples. You want to make sure you don't fall short on time. We only have 8 weeks, and if you are going to special order any samples from manufacturers or off of online sites to complete your boards, that you're looking ahead to that. So I've put that in week 5, and really, if you can, order a bunch of samples prior in week 4 so that whether or not you're going to use them, even if you haven't picked color, if you have kind of a concept of line and design of materials, order it in a couple of colors. You can never order too many samples, and you can always give them back to us to use for our design library, and we can pick through the extras that you don't use. But make sure you get ahead of that so you're not in week 7 trying to go to Hobby Lobby or Joann's and stuck with a bunch of materials that don't really highlight your project and the concept that you were trying to present. Also, I have a prompt here for beginning perspectives. While they're not due for a couple more weeks, if you're able to get the brunt of this workload done, it would help you to get ahead. So I have added things that aren't 100% due and some prompts for future things, just depending on how far you can get. That the bare minimum, you must meet the requirements of the critiques for each week in order for you to realistically be able to complete it within the 8 weeks that we have given to us. Something we do need to talk about, and possibly you can email me about, is when you would like your final jury to be. I'd like to give you as much time in that eighth week to do a practice presentation, tie up loose ends, finalize your research binder, and assemble and organize your drawings. I wouldn't necessarily want to do the critique that day of class. So if you could talk about flexibility on 27th, 28th, or 29th for you, and I can then relay that to the other jury members, which will most likely be Cheryl and Kathy from your prior classes. They'll be here working this summer too, and maybe a few coworkers or people we gather for your jury. Just let me know if you're willing to do any of these days, or if you're completely unwilling, then we can put it in this 8th week, but that will mean that we're moving some of this workload back into week 7. So I might shoot you an email later today talking about this process of finalizing our jury date for the class. Make sure to print a copy of your calendar. I know we're trying to be green and save trees, but this is so important to your project management for these 8 weeks. I think it's worth the paper and organizational process for you to do that. So every week I will post my lecture materials and reading assignments after I give the lecture. Other than that, the homework assignment and session overviews are automatically posted and have been up since the class started. Last week the information was available. So if you click on homework and assignments, here then we have critique 2 and 3. Now I call it critique 2 and 3 because we're squashing 16 weeks into 8 weeks. And so I wanted you to see the process of how it would look in a 16-week course, but see how much you have to do because we have the limitation of the 8 weeks. So for this critique week, it says 2 and 3. There's 2 different documents that kind of helps you compartmentalize the pieces and the structure and organization. So we'll start with critique 2. So here again you'll have the notes at the bottom, a place for you to write any questions or comments that you have for me and then send me an email on it or write notes on what you need to do for that week. But you can see there's research and concept development, using your additional research client profile and design concept statements, edit the profile, collect the photos, get more articles and websites, then create 5 spatial relationship diagrams, bubble diagrams, or conceptual idea and detail sketches. Just keep in mind, you're not, even though you may have started on your project and feel like you've gotten it down to one concept, I need to see, again, all this pre-work of working towards 3 different concepts and development stages. There's still a lot of fine-tuning, I think, that can be had even if you've started in the past. It should be pretty rough, and if you have anything that you've previously worked on, you can go ahead and add it, but don't just turn that in and not add to that. I want you to come up with new concepts. You're coming back into this fresh, into a new semester, so go ahead and maybe use one of the concept statements you had before, but I'd like you to re-examine and look at your work and take a step back and start over in a way. So here is critique 3 that would follow. All right, can't get rid of this. There we go. Space planning. So this one has a big long paragraph and says all semester will be expanding upon what we've already completed. And then it talks about producing typicals, researching, creating 5 block plans, and traffic patterns, and then selecting and refining down to one design concept. So again, that's the format for the class. You'll go into your class sessions. Each session corresponds both the calendar and the syllabus, with what's given for the week as a basic outline on the outside, and then clicking into the folder. We'll have a session outline at the top. You'll have some type of links or possibly readings and lecture notes, and then you'll have the critiques that you're to be working on for that week. The bibliography is something that you should be refining all throughout the semester while you're working on your binder. It's not also something that's not called out in each and every critique, but it should be constantly changing and developing as your research is changing and developing with your project. Also in the PowerPoint that I will be posting later, so for this week, you're working on an adjacency matrix. I have some examples of adjacency matrices, and they're laid out a little bit differently for each. So the first one is the most common adjacency matrix, where it has the simple triangle, each of the spaces, and then a labeling of some sort for the adjacency, nearby, not adjacent, not related. But there's another way that you can lay it out where you can list each of the areas twice to create kind of an overlapping upside down triangle. It's the same concept, a different layout. The mind works in different ways, so I wanted to give you a few options. You can review each of those. And then the third one that's just more specific, so it helps you to get farther into the design process. It says each of the areas, immediate, relative, void, general, same concept as the first adjacency matrix that we were looking at. But then it also talks about daylight views, privacy, and plumbing, and you can have a number of other options that you could list to the side coming out of here. So does the restaurant or bar need some type of daylight or view specified to it? It's just more information and kind of a better way for you to get a visual associated with your design on top of thinking about how the space is, but just those small details and how they relate to each of those spaces. And then to the side you can have a special requirements notes field. So storage is cold, must be refrigerated. Things to think about adding your FF&E in, but starting in this adjacency matrix before you get too far in the actual design process. And then eventually the next week we'll be going into schematics, bubble diagrams, and block plans, which I'll have more examples of in the next lecture presentation. I did want to talk about, for research, we went over resources, and I wanted to talk about bibliography when doing a PowerPoint, as you will also have a digital presentation for the final in this class. I've added some links here. The first link is a written outline of how to do a bibliography on a PowerPoint. So it just gives you step-by-step on creating a bibliography slide and reference and formatting. The second link that I've given you on the PowerPoint is a YouTube video for those of you who are more visual. And I don't believe I've asked this a couple times in classes if you can hear the audio. I think you only hear me and don't hear the audio, so I'm going to mute the actual YouTube video. But it talks about using hyperlinks so that you can bounce back and forth between slides, and that's what you'll do to create a more professional bibliography in your final presentation. That way, if I'm on a slide and I have a bunch of text that I'm referencing as research, I could click the hyperlink and it'll take me to my bibliography to show me the citation for that book, website, whichever educational source I'm using for that text or photo, if you feel that the image is something you want to reference as well in your bibliography. But this is just a more professional way. You'll note that on my PowerPoints, I have just done quick citations at the bottom of each slide when I feel it's necessary for quoted information on my slides. But for your final presentations, it'll almost be easier for you and more professional to use the bibliography page, because you should be working on a typed written bibliography in a Word document, which you could then come through and paste on your bibliography sheet or slide and eventually hyperlink back to the slides that you're referencing. It's not something I've seen done a lot in prior classes, but I think it's easier to grade, but it's also important for you to understand how you're using content within your presentations in a professional way. And when you get out into the field, it's important to watch out for copyright laws and make sure that you are giving credit where credit is due. All right. Everything else in the start here to get your computer ready for class talks about the requirements in technology and help with Blackboard and technology. We went through a little bit of the class sessions. You can see each of the design development stages, and then also going into your drawing set and what's due for each week. Again, I will be sending out an email later to talk about scheduling. I received an email from Brenda. Katie, I will be asking you what time works best for you each week to review if you can't critique today, or if we can come up with a critique time where we all can meet on our class time. I will be posting this video in class session 1.